Welcome back to CryptosRUs. I am George. We're all George. In this interview, I'm talking to Sue Ennis, head of investor relations and corporate development at Hut 8. So welcome, Sue. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm George. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, really pumped to speak with you guys today.
Do you know why I say that? We're all George.
You know what? I actually don't. I love it, but I actually don't know the history.
Well, it's just really simple. I mean, it's pulled from Walking Dead, but it basically means that we're all one. We all stand together. We stay strong, especially during volatile times. That's just something that we say on the channel.
I'm George, definitely.
All right, so very there's a lot of questions. I'm very interested in talking with you about Hut 8, which I found on your website. You guys describe yourself as the oldest North American mining company. And I did some research, started back in 2011, and you guys are headquartered in Toronto, Canada. Is that correct?
No, we're actually, well, that's where our corporate office is, but we're actually mainly based out of Alberta.
Oh, okay.
That's where the bulk of that's where our mining operations are, out of Medicine Hat, Alberta, and Drumheller.
Okay. Also, I saw on your website, you guys have, 100 data centers, but they're labeled black boxes. Can you explain what they are exactly?
Yeah, so black boxes are basically what holds our miners, and it's just a traditional. It's just a certain infrastructure that support the actual mining equipment and supports that plug-in between the equipment and the power source. And one of the benefits about the Hut 8 black boxes in particular is that they're actually mobile, and you can technically move them wherever really the best energy economics are. I mean, we've been in the same spot for the past 3 years. Alberta will always be our home, but that is sort of one of the benefits, is that they are technically easier to move around.
Okay.
If need be.
Yeah, I was going to ask my follow-up. Have you guys moved it before?
No. Like, again, we have been, Medicine Hat and Drumheller are our home base. But that's just sort of, it is a benefit to owning the actual containers that, creates the data and crunches the numbers.
Okay. So I also saw you guys in total, I think you guys use up about 109 megawatts in total for all your black boxes, right? Somewhere around there. So do you guys utilize any green energy at all at this point?
So the source of our power is a mix of wind and natural gas. So one of the real benefits, there's actually many benefits for us being in Alberta and why we love Alberta so much. Number one is our sources of energy are a mix of wind and natural gas. And number two, it's always quite windy and very cold in Alberta. Most of your audience probably knows that the machines themselves can actually get incredibly hot. So we do definitely benefit from the freezing cold temperatures. And we recently signed an interesting memorandum of understanding with a company called Validus Power. And Validus effectively is a mobile fleet of generators that is focused on things like going into oil and gas flare sites and effectively capturing excess flare gas and then converting that excess flare into digital energy. And so, for example, in the case of working with Hut 8, it would be, how do we convert that excess flare into digital energy, aka energy that can be used to mine Bitcoin? So ESG initiatives and different ways to go green are definitely something that's on Hut 8's radar. And we see a huge opportunity with how we can potentially help again address some of this excess waste that's going into the atmosphere.
It's awesome. So let me ask you something that's been on my mind for quite some time. And I think a lot of people are actually thinking about this too. So as a mining facility or a company, how do you decide how much of the Bitcoins that you guys get or earn per month you keep versus how much you have to sell off? Is it just basically what you need to pay for operations, or is there some other kind of schedule you guys follow?
Well, I think it really has to do with sort of what are the pillars and the philosophy behind your business operations. And at Hut 8, we believe hodl. We are hodlers at heart, keep calm and hodl on. So what we do is we mine and hodl as much Bitcoin as we can. And then we look for ways that we can earn fiat revenue based on top of that hodled BTC. So for example, we have 1,000 Bitcoin that are currently earning 4% yield in a Genesis high yield savings account. We earned about 1.6 million last year hosting off of hosting revenues from letting people come in and use some of our power and hosting them. And so that's sort of how we look at paying for our operations versus a lot of our competitors have had to sell their Bitcoin to keep the lights on.
Right.
That's something that, we really try and prioritize and do as little as possible.
That's awesome. I was looking at this one website that actually showed how many Bitcoins people own. I mean, from companies, right? And I think you guys hold over 3,000 Bitcoins in total. Is that correct?
So as of yesterday, we actually have 3,233 Bitcoins. And that makes us like the largest self-mined Bitcoin holders of any publicly traded company in the world.
Wow.
And then I think out of publicly traded companies, so for example, the Teslas, the MicroStrategies, I believe we're about number 5 globally.
Right. And then out of that 3,000 plus, you just said 1,000 is used to generate income right now too, because of the staking, right?
Yeah. And definitely looking at more opportunities like that is on our radar for 2021. Like, again, how do you make that hodled BTC work a little bit harder for you? And we love the idea, one of the ideas we're exploring is like, how do you even, if you believe Bitcoin is a treasury reserve asset, how can you build more instrumentation on top of that? Right. Again, to help you earn more income. So
very fascinating. Okay, so the next one is something that I'm also very interested in hearing is Bitcoin difficulty adjusts every 2 weeks, and it gets harder and more difficult because there's more and more miners that are spinning up more mining machines, right? So how does Hut 8 keep up with that?
Yeah, so no matter what's happening in the Bitcoin economic cycle, we have a constant refresh strategy happening with our fleet. So about every 6 to 12 months, we were trying to refresh about 25% of our fleet, which is why last year we actually were able to secure and buy equipment for about 20 to 30 bucks per terahash. That is currently now going for about $90 per terahash because we're obviously in a Bitcoin bull cycle, but we were buying machines in the Bitcoin bear cycle last year. Mm-hmm. But then also on that, and actually what's really wild is that the full capacity of miners still haven't come on yet. And we've been incredibly lucky because we actually have a full fleet of mining equipment that is mining in the money. Initially we were going to kick out some of our older miners and we have been doing some replacements of that because we just did a big order. But we've actually had a happy problem of having even our oldest, most appreciated equipment is actually profitable and running at maximum capacity and mining. So yeah, it's been an interesting dynamic, but we are also one of the only miners that while we're incredibly bullish on Bitcoin, we also do still believe that, again, it is a commodity. There will be increased cyclicality, even if it's, for example, people, once more miners come on board and that hash rate goes up, if margins then subsequently get suppressed, we're always looking at ways that no matter what part of the cycle we're at in Bitcoin, how can we make money? So how can we make money when in the up cycle? How can we make money on the downside? So like I said, a couple of other areas we're looking at, obviously is capacity and expansion, 100% will always be Bitcoin miners, but looking at other things like how can you use mining infrastructure to get into other industries? Like for example, high performance computing. As I mentioned, that Validus power deal, there's also potentiality to, if it makes sense, and the mining economics aren't as favorable, to turn down the amount of energy that's being used towards Bitcoin mining and then in fact actually sell it back to the grid. Like for example, if we had been in Texas when that cold snap happened, we could have actually powered down a little and then sold money back to the grid. So it really is about how can we always grow our shareholder value and make money regardless of what the direction of Bitcoin.
And you guys recently did, I saw a headline, I think you guys just purchased an additional 14,400 miners to be used in Foundry's mining pool. Is that correct?
So we have pointed 14,400 miners to be used
Okay.
in Foundry's mining pool. Again, we loved the business case for Foundry. Some of it I'm not sure if I'm allowed to get into just yet, but from an economics perspective and a power perspective, we thought that Foundry was an excellent partner. And also, as we continue our momentum of really, trying to be the most innovative miner in the Western Hemisphere, we thought it made a lot of sense to increase our partnerships with the North American pools.
Interesting. Also, speaking of headlines, so this was back in 2020, I believe, and it could have been even earlier. But I remember hearing about Fidelity, and Fidelity's been making big splashes everywhere. Of course, they have their custody service. They just recently said they're going to try to come out their own Bitcoin ETF. But I've also read that they are actually investors of Hut 8 as well, right? They have over 10% stake.
Yeah, absolutely. We were really lucky. So Mark Schmel, who runs a lot of the Canadian, actually, I think it's North American Fidelity tech funds. He's a very savvy, astute investor. And he's owned us for quite some time. And we're really lucky to have them in our corner.
Is there, I don't know if you could share, is it further relationship building with Fidelity? Is there anything upcoming with that kind of partnership with them?
I definitely am not at liberty at this time. And believe me, it actually kills me because I'm a pretty candid person. It kills me that I can't share more with the community. But again, legally, we have to be very careful about what we say before it's actually formally announced. That's sort of, that's sort of how it rolls. But yes, we value our relationship with Mark Schmel and Fidelity and really are happy to have them as partners.
Understandable. What about here's this general question. I get asked about this all the time. A lot of critics or just non-believers will say that, well, Bitcoin is too centralized because too much of the mining hash power is in China right now. So how do you respond to a critic that tells you that?
So we hear that all the time, but if you look at how the actual network is designed, number one, for someone to effectively take over the network and effectively try and centralize control over it, that would work against the actual mining economics and incentivization system. So for one thing, you'd have to effectively take over an extraordinary cost, an extraordinary cost for energy to actually mine and take over the entire blockchain. But then also the incentives, the Bitcoin price would subsequently fall if everyone thought that it was suddenly under centralization and, one central entity controlling the blockchain. So that's sort of part of, maybe I'm not, explaining this succinctly enough, but I think that's some of the beauty of the incentivization mechanisms built into Bitcoin, is that you are disincentivized to try and hijack the network, because then your output and what you would ultimately win would decrease in value, but your inputs for what you did to try and win that coin would increase exponentially. So it's not really economically palatable for anyone to do that.
That's an interesting answer. I've never heard anyone else explain it that way, but it makes a whole lot of sense. If you try to do, say, like a 51% attack, it's killing your bottom line, because whatever you have, whatever you're trying to gain would just basically crumble.
Get dumped.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So interesting. I was going to ask about, like, a follow-up question to that is, I know most of your black boxes or data centers are located in Canada right now, right?
Yeah.
Alberta, you mentioned. Are there any expansion plans to get out of Canada or any other city? Like you mentioned Texas, any other, I hear Texas is a hotspot right now for a lot of data centers, especially for Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
Are there any future plans to expand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, expansion is always on the radar. And as I mentioned, this MOU, this exploratory period that we're having with Validus Power is about, expanding power. So they have about 9 fleets, I believe it is. And each truck goes from about 6 megawatts to 35 megawatts of power. And so being able to leverage a partnership like that, plus the potential environmental benefit of rolling into an oil and gas site, capturing that excess flare gas, and then converting that into digital energy,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big sort of area, because ESG and going more green is also a big priority for us. There actually also is a 400 megawatt wind farm that's being built pretty close to some of our operations in Alberta, which we also see as another potential benefit. But yeah, absolutely, absolutely, expansion and capacity and meaningful M&As, all of it's on the table for 2021.
Awesome. Awesome. I guess the final question is, and maybe you kind of already answered it by with some of the stuff you explained, but I did also see on your website, you guys proclaim that you're the most innovative mining company.
Mm-hmm.
So elaborate on that. Why are you guys the most innovative?
Yeah, so that's something that we're going to be showing you guys a lot in 2021. But like I mentioned earlier, we're innovative in the sense that we're really looking at different ways that we can make revenue for our shareholders, regardless of Bitcoin market cycles. And we think a lot of miners have never really sort of looked at the space that way.
Mm-hmm.
Innovating and getting more into the ESG space, like I said, potentially the high performance computing space, looking at ways, like I said, that we can make our Bitcoin work a little bit harder for us, be it, getting into different financial instrumentation or yield plays. All of it is on the table, because at the end of the day, we just want to be able to make you guys money at the
Right.
top end of the cycle, at the low end of the cycle, and just a win-win overall.
All right. So final question. This is really, there's no right or wrong. This is more of your personal opinion. So how
Yeah.
do you view Bitcoin in 2021 versus, say, some of the previous cycles, maybe in 2017 or 2013, where it's the
Yeah.
tail end of a 4-year cycle? Do you view this year being different than all previous, like last 4 years of the cycle?
Yeah, I do, definitely. And the reason for that is because of the increase in institutional adoption and interest in the space. So like the really big sticky money. I mean, you even see, for example, MasterCard and Visa coming out with crypto rails, Fidelity's coming out with now Bitcoin ETF, this never ending money printing that's happening in the US. I think, if Bitcoin can capture even 20% of gold's $11 trillion market cap, that's an incredible bull case for Bitcoin. And even just to be honest, some of the calls that come into me on a weekly basis from massive institutions, like I'm talking guys who run, $2 to $4 to $10 billion, asking me, explain to me what it is that you do, explain to me what Bitcoin is about. Versus I think in 2017, there was still a lot of, there wasn't as much of institutional interest or even, quite frankly, belief in the space. Like I have been in the space since about late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was one of the first employees at Canada's largest crypto exchange, CoinSquare. So I've been through the cycles, and the people who were calling me then versus the
Mm-hmm.
people who are calling me now it's night and day difference. So I think it's the institutional adoption, and just the big players that are now getting into the game and offering crypto custody, like the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, offering different funds. I think Morgan Stanley as well has 3 funds that have come out. So I think this time it is different and incredibly exciting.
Awesome. I 100% agree.
Yeah,
100% agree.
I am George.
All right. I think that's all the questions I had. So thanks for coming on to the show. I think it was
Yeah,
very, very educational.
I love your
And
stuff.
yeah, and I think you guys are really on top of it based on what you just said, being innovative, finding ways to look at excess energy and other ways to basically increase the bottom line. Very, very interesting. So thanks again for being on. And for everyone else, thanks for watching. Hit the like, subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in mining companies, definitely check out Hut 8. So Sue, thanks
Bye,
again.
guys. I am George. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.